So, the draft is happening, right? It is happening, and there's a lot of different teams to talk about. You know, I'm sitting next to my son. We're driving to basketball practice last night, and he's like, ugh, we took Joe Alt. And I was like, by we, you mean the Chargers? Yeah, dude, why didn't we take a wide receiver? We get rid of Mike Williams. We get rid of Keenan Allen. Right? Didn't your son say the same thing there, Jason Stewart? Essentially the same thing?
Affirmative.
Yeah. And that's what the kids are saying, right? And I was like, dude, if you haven't figured out what they're doing with the Chargers, with Harbaugh ball, then let me let you in on a little secret, okay? He brings in Greg Roman, who's, I believe, the last three offenses he touched in the NFL were the Ravens, which, yes, I know they topped out and everybody blamed Greg Roman, but Lamar Jackson was the MVP. The Buffalo Bills, when Tyrod Taylor was their quarterback and they went to the playoffs first time in like 13 years. I think Greg Roman was the OC. And, of course, the San Francisco 49ers when they went to the Super Bowl with Jim Harbaugh as the coach. Like, look, they brought in his two favorite running backs, and they said, hey, we're going to run the football, and we're going to protect our primary asset. The asinine comments over people going like, hey, will they trade? Will they trade their quarterback? Like, if you think for a second they're going to trade their quarterback, you haven't talked to anybody in the Chargers organization. So they think they have their quarterback. They want to protect their quarterback and run the football, and they'll figure the rest out over the rest of the draft and getting them some wide receivers. But I thought the most interesting one was what happened at number 8. Okay, Michael Penix, who is kind of a medical miracle, right? He's had multiple knee surgeries, and yet he ran a 4.5? Got a cannon for an arm. He is left-handed. I've seen all the memes with dogs in Atlanta when a left-handed Michael was drafted at quarterback. Great memes. Great work, social media world out there. You're awesome. You're awesome. But I got to point out what has happened here in Atlanta. Okay? So, again, I'm not a huge Falcons fan. And I do, on some level, understand, hey, man, you got a chance. You got a chance to draft a quarterback of the future who's sitting there at 8, and you have Kirk Cousins, who's 36 years old, coming off an Achilles tendon tear. There's a world there where Kirk Cousins plays 2 years, and then Michael Penix takes over, kind of like Jordan Love in Green Bay. And it's seamless, and you're actually good for a long time. That's great. That's great. And by many people's estimation, the roster is pretty good. They just needed a quarterback. They just needed a plan. And now they have one. But man, remember, this is Terry Fontenot, the dude who apparently what happened was Bill Belichick was going to be hired as head coach, and the front office is like, nah, we don't want to work with that guy. Okay, well, this is the same front office that drafted Kyle Pitts at 4. And then Richie Grant in the second round. And then they drafted the next year Drake London. Hey, who's been okay. But they drafted Drake London at 8. Last year, Bijan Robinson, who I love Bijan Robinson. I think he's got a chance to be really, really good. At 4 in the draft? Ooh, some pretty good players that were still available. So the point is, the point is that when we look at, for example, the Chargers, okay, you can see a plan in place that makes sense, right? Does anyone dispute what the Chargers are doing? And I'm only using the Chargers as a jumping off. Does anybody dispute what they know what they're doing? Right? You have arguably or inarguably maybe one of the best left tackle in football. Now you drafted Alt, who I think is going to play right tackle. You got your bookends. You start from there. They got good running backs. They just brought in. They know the system. They got a quarterback. Like they're good. I would guess that with a wide receiver heavy draft, you'll see some wide receivers taken, and they got to change their defense to mirror how they want to play under Harbaugh, and that'll be a work in progress. But what worked for Harbaugh will work for his brother in Baltimore, what worked for Harbaugh in San Francisco, what worked for Harbaugh in Michigan, what worked for Harbaugh at Stanford is likely the plan. And Joe Alt fits that plan, correct? Okay, what's the plan in Atlanta? Right, you go get Kirk Cousins because you want to win now. You draft a quarterback at 8 because you want to play him in 3 years? And I understand in 3 years, Michael Penix's contract will not hurt you at all. The middle of that rookie deal, 3 years, 3 years, 4, won't hurt you at all. But wow, what a risk. Wow, what a risk. You know? And, you know, they took Bijan Robinson, who has no skeletons in the closet, right? And passed on Jalen Carter, but man, does Jalen Carter have a ton of talent. You know? So I'm just sitting here going, in and of itself, I don't hate it. Drafting a quarterback because you have a quarterback who's 36 years old coming off an Achilles tendon. But when you factor in that these same guys have drafted poorly atop the draft the past couple of years, and again, I'm admitting I love Bijan Robinson. I'm a Bijan Robinson fan. And people have said, you're okay drafting a running back in the first round. Just don't re-sign him at the top of the market deal. And we'll see if Atlanta does that. All right. But 4 is really high for a running back, no matter how good he is, especially when you didn't have a quarterback last year. All right. And then you go sign the bell of the ball in Kirk Cousins, and you draft his eventual replacement. That is bizarre planning from Terry Fontenot. Here's Terry Fontenot explaining the logic behind their pick.
Kirk Cousins is our quarterback. We're very excited about Kirk, very excited about this team. You look at the future and you look at big picture, but we are very excited about that quarterback room. And again, Kirk is our quarterback, but adding Michael Penix is thinking about the future. We're very excited about where Kirk is. We feel very confident in him and everything he's gonna do for us. Again, we're thinking more long term with this. So very, very excited about Kirk. That has not changed. This is a pick thinking about the future.
Yeah, listen, and I'm sure the first call he got after he hung up the phone was from Kirk Cousins saying Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, right? Because they've said essentially what the Packers said to Aaron Rodgers, and it's not crazy talk, right? Not crazy talk. Hey, dude, you're 36. It's 2 years guaranteed, and if you keep playing great, that's awesome. We'll figure out the Penix thing then. In the meantime, we have your eventual successor because everybody ages out of this thing. The problem with it is you're going to take a developmental quarterback who's 25 years old at 8 in the draft when he's not going to play for 2 years? And you didn't even clear it with Cousins, and it doesn't seem to marry with the we want to win now sort of thing? Like, look, if you got dudes for days, if you just have a stacked roster and you're like, let's just grab and stash a quarterback not playing for 2 years, by all means. But I don't think that's what this roster looks like. So, look, many of these guys we won't know, and we still won't know a year in. And we definitely don't know after one round of the draft, because while teams have passed on wide receivers in the first round, there's plenty to take in the second round. We've seen that from the Packers years in the past. Like, hey, dude, we'll be fine. We'll take guys in the second, third round. So we'll see. We'll be able to pinpoint what a team's focus is watching them. Like for the Raiders, you guys know I love the Brock Bowers pick. I thought he's the best player in the SEC. And I understand they need a quarterback. But because the quarterbacks that they wanted were gone, they went with the best player. And he's nasty. He's nasty. And how about that division with the two tight ends? I mean, he could be the next Kelsey. He's that good a football player. So Every team's story is different unto itself. Not every team, believe it or not, is competing for a championship this year. But you have to have congruent draft picks, just like you have to have congruent offense and defense. Does that make sense? Right? You can't have, for example, if you're going to have a super physical offense, you got to have a super physical defense. One in which is built. If you're going to have the Ravens style offense, you got to have the Ravens style of defense. Whereas I think Kansas City style, I think it marries with how they play offensively. But it also takes place with everything in an organization. Congruency. It has to work all together. And the reason the alt pick, I use that one, is it works all together with what the Chargers have been doing in the offseason, which is dismantling the previous way it was built and reconfiguring it into a power offense that runs the football, that protects their quarterback, that runs play action so that Justin Herbert has time. He's not under duress, is not injured. Right? Makes sense. Signing Kirk Cousins when you desperately need a quarterback to win and win now makes sense. Made sense to me. Drafting his eventual replacement who won't play for 2 years, drafting a backup for at least 2 years when he's 25 years old, when he's had multiple injuries, but more than anything, when I thought you're in win now mode. That doesn't make sense to me. And you don't have the positive equity from previous drafts. Had you killed it the past couple years in the draft, had everyone been talking about how talented this roster was, they just needed a quarterback and they'll be fine. And then everything else is cake. By all means. Right? That's, by the way, where Tampa was when they added Tom Brady. Everybody thought that roster's really good. Just need a quarterback who doesn't turn it over. Just a solid quarterback, doesn't turn it over. Adult in the room, a belief in winning. You couldn't do it with Jameis. Jameis had been there through too many losses, too many missed opportunities, too many turnovers. I got it. That all made sense. Arians not really a detail guy. He brought in, he bring in Brady. Brady handled all the details with the offense. That makes sense. You can go back and pull the tape. I was working at Fox Sports Radio at the time when they drafted Jordan Love. I said that made sense. Because it was late in the first round. They're never going to get to move up to draft. And if you actually talk to anybody in the NFL, they all said he's like 2-3 years away. Got a chance to be good. Got to be coached well. And I don't know if Jordan Love is as good as he looked at times last year, but so far the plan has worked seamlessly. What's the plan here in Atlanta? That's the issue. And then you factor in that supposedly Belichick had the job, and the reason he didn't get the job was he couldn't jibe with these guys. Maybe he couldn't jibe with these guys because they stink at their job. Is that possible? Remember, the previous answer to their quarterback issues was Marcus, I want to say, not Tuiasosopo, Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. That was the previous plan. Now it's Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. No doubt an upgrade. I like Kirk Cousins, but you paid him $100 million. He's coming off an Achilles, and instead of surrounding him with more talent and getting a viable backup or drafting a developmental quarterback later in the draft, he drafted a 25-year-old who is going to have to play in year 3. Give me your thoughts. At Gottlieb Show is the Twitter and Instagram handle. At Gottlieb Show. Buyer, how was your draft experience?
Draft experience was great, but can I weigh in on this?
Of course,
on this for the 2 cents?
Of course.
There's a difference, though, of Aaron Rodgers and having Jordan Love than signing Kirk Cousins and having that's you're changing plans in a span of 6 weeks.
Right.
And so
I probably didn't. Did I not articulate it when I said it made sense? I thought I said it made sense, the Love thing, whereas this one doesn't.
Yeah. I thought that you were saying that, look, the Packers did it, and that's what the Falcons' explanation was for it. It's also just the plain as day of this was their plan. They didn't trade up because Penix fell. They didn't.
I don't know if it was, though, because they didn't do a visit with him.
No, they did. They flew to Seattle to see him. They had a contingency to Seattle to go and see him.
Okay.
And the spot that you thought that Penix was going to go was 13. And so for them to, if he was going to go anywhere, you felt it was probably to the Raiders, or if Minnesota was going to try to trade
I think the Raiders
up.
were going to take him.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And so like there's the sense of not even of like trading down or trading back and trying to maneuver. They felt that he was going to go in the top 13 and that it was beneficial for them to take him at 8, which is, again, free agency was not even 2 months ago. And whether Cousins is healthy or not, if he's not healthy, then don't give him $100 million guaranteed.
Yeah, that's you're actually doing a better job of making my point, which is like, again, if we put in the context the actual Aaron Rodgers thing, he was a malcontent who didn't like the new offense, didn't like the new system, didn't have a good season, and started to look older. So they drafted a guy who's a developmental prospect, and it matched up with how long it would take him to develop and how long Aaron Rodgers had on his deal. And the surprise was Aaron Rodgers turned it around and won back-to-back MVPs, right?
Yep.
And so then they made the hard decision, bit the bullet. Aaron was too much. They got rid of Aaron. By the way, just in time. Mm-hmm. It's literally anyone who says anything about the Packers, no matter if Jordan Love tanks or blows up, they got rid of Aaron Rodgers 4 plays before he tore his Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
You cannot get a better trade than that. Okay? And now they have cash galore to spend, and they're in a good position. Okay, but that was the context behind the pick, was they had Aaron Rodgers. He looked like he was fading. He looked like he didn't like the new system, so they drafted a guy that in a couple of years could replace him. The difference is, as you're probably pointing out, is like they champion this. Like, hey, we want to win. We want it in now, and we got Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins, conversely, I know coming off the injury, but was coming off an unbelievable season. He was on pace to throw for 6,000 yards. Oh, yeah, by the way, the other thing you do is you just pissed off Kirk Cousins. And I know he's performed well, but I guarantee that Kirk Cousins hung up the phone after MFing his agent up and down, or maybe he didn't MF him because it's Kirk Cousins. Gosh, golly, gee willikers, that really stinks, right?
Yes.
But I guarantee he turned to his wife and said, this is just like Washington. Like, dude, he's got PTSD. Okay, he was in Washington, and the damn GM didn't know his first name, kept calling him Kurt when his first name is Kirk. And he's like, these freaking guys, they sign me, they parade me around, they champion me. Matt Ryan retires. That was a big thing. It happened 2 days ago, right? And I think part of that was they wanted to, the Matt Ryan era is over, pass the baton officially to Kirk Cousins. Great. Oh, hey, by the way, we're going to take with the 8th pick in the draft. And he doesn't fit what Jordan Love was. Jordan Love was super young, had only played 2 years in college, and was a developmental guy. Penix is not a developmental guy. He's been developed. Does he need to improve? Of course. And it doesn't mean that he's not going to be a good quarterback. It just means these plans don't make any sense. And I use the Chargers because it doesn't have to work, but you can see what their plan is. It's painfully obvious. We're going to kick the crap out of you at the line of scrimmage and run play action. And it doesn't matter as much with our wide receiving talent if you can't stop us from running the football. Anyway. And I'm kind of fired up about the Chargers thing. I kind of want to see him be the bully for once.